It's time for the VolQuest podcast, where we dissect the biggest news items of the week. Good Monday, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of the VolQuest.com podcast presented by our good friends at Smoky Mountain Organics. Remember, check them out at SmokyMountainOrganics.com or check out one of their 4 locations in East Tennessee, including that Knoxville location. With Austin Price, I'm Brent Hubbs. Special edition of the Monday podcast. I think this is an important podcast from an educational standpoint for fans out there regarding the name, image, likeness. James Clawson, his company is Spyre Marketing, sports marketing, been in marketing for a long time. James is on the forefront of NIL stuff, got a lot of things going on in Tennessee with Tennessee and student athletes and NIL. James, thanks for taking the time to join us today. Can you give us a brief background of kind of how you got moving in this direction in the NIL process?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Brett. Thanks, Austin, for having me. Obviously the NIL is new. There's been a lot of people talking about it really over the last year and what it's going to look like and what it's going to mean for college athletics. We had continued to monitor it, tried to stay in touch with it because obviously in terms of what we do working with athletes, it was a new avenue of potential clients that we could represent even earlier. And so, we're based in Knoxville. We've lived here all our lives. We went to Tennessee. As July 1st became closer, it was obvious that the NCAA was going to issue kind of a blanket waiver and allow all schools to do NIL, even if their state laws didn't go into effect on July 1. And so we saw it as an opportunity to really engage with the Knoxville community, to engage with the alumni of Tennessee, some of the donors, and really try to create a way to provide significant value for Tennessee student athletes.
Where's the name come from?
Yeah, so we just, Hunter and I, my business partner, that was kind of one of the hardest things we had to figure out was what we were going to name our company. And it was kind of like the tallest point of a building is the Spyre. So we ended up changing the I and putting a Y just to make it a little bit different. But that's it.
All right, that sounds good. What do you think? Your announcement today, and what you guys are announcing. What is the next step? What are you moving forward with here?
Yeah, so we're obviously still in communications with a lot of alumni, a lot of donors. I think the biggest thing is awareness. We want to make people aware of what we're doing. We want people to feel good about, hey, Tennessee has a plan. Tennessee has a group, even though the university cannot officially be a part of what we're doing, but that there's somebody out there that is going out and advocating on behalf of Tennessee student athletes to find opportunities for them. And so some opportunities will come in the form of, a business in Knoxville saying, hey, we want to work with a player, and we'll help that process from kind of finding the player to signing the contract. Or, we as a company will go out, we'll create events, we'll do things in the community, whether it's, football camps, meet and greets, autograph signings, and different things. It's a way to really engage the community with the athletes.
James, when I look at the press release here, the biggest word that stands out to me is the word secured. You guys have secured, funds from, people around the state, donors, that type of thing. And some of the, the leading names you would ever, think about when it comes to Tennessee athletics. How big is that to go ahead and have that type of commitment from people that are, not at Tennessee, but involved in Tennessee athletics?
Yeah. We've been actively involved with doing this for Tennessee student athletes since July. We haven't made any kind of announcement, but as you start to see the landscape evolve around college athletics, a lot of the big schools are coming out and making announcements about their NIL groups and what's going on. And we felt like from a standpoint of not only perception, but also reality, that the fact that, we do have significant donor support. The donors of Tennessee have been have been engaged with this, really since the beginning. We've almost looked at it as, hey, this is a way that Tennessee can get back, just looking at football specifically right now, but, it's a way that Tennessee could potentially get back quicker in football than it could maybe have otherwise, just from the standpoint that if you look at Knoxville, largest city in the SEC, aside from Nashville, probably more Tennessee fans in Nashville than Vanderbilt fans anyway. And really, Tennessee has no statewide competition. So we're not competing for company or brand money, with other schools like, say, like Alabama and Auburn would be split, Georgia Tech could be split, Clemson, South Carolina. So there are some real advantages we think that Tennessee's got, to kind of do this in a really big way.
It's a rainy day here in Knoxville, but James just did shade at Vanderbilt. James, when you met with donors, when you met with businesses in Knoxville or around the state, have they been able to grasp it? Because this is all new for everybody, when it comes to businesses and being able to, have a sponsored athlete, that type of thing. Have they grasped the landscape of this, or has it been something where they're like kind of taken aback and then they've slowly got it?
So I think two responses. One, donors have been on board with it from the beginning. The consensus among all the people, kind of in the Tennessee family, whether it's donors, alumni, everybody just wants to win at a really high level. And if this is what we're going to have to do to get to where we want to get to, or sustain the programs, that we have that are successful right now, we want to do that. And I guess from a business standpoint, there's been a big educational component to what we're trying to do. Just because it's new, it came really quickly as of July 1. It caught people by surprise, especially in Tennessee, because the law doesn't go in effect until January 1st. And so it's just been explaining, hey, what you can do, what you can't do. What if an athlete messes up? What if he gets arrested? How do we handle those situations? I don't want to get, companies will say, I don't want to get sideways, or I don't want to get upside down with the school and something I'm doing with a player. So I want to make sure whatever I do right. So, we've kind of been there to be that, that education, kind of component for the businesses, and to explain to them how they could do it, whether we do, vetting of certain athletes, social media scrubs and whatnot. So, we're just kind of try to make it easy for them, if they want to work with an athlete.
James, it's felt like since July 1, like the Wild Wild West, like cowboys out there going to claim the land in the new territory, so to speak. It's what
John. Are you John Dutton, James?
Yeah, that's what it's felt like, I think, to a lot of people out there, in terms of, what are the parameters, what are not what the parameters are not. How have you and your staff been able to kind of grasp where you can go and where you can't go, or where things are, where things aren't at this point? How do you get a handle on it, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Brent. The NCAA has been silent on this for the most part, and it feels like that may be by design. It may be their way of saying, hey, we need national legislation, and the only way to get that is to see this thing kind of just explode on itself. But just from our standpoint, we do have a great relationship with a lot of people at Tennessee, especially people in compliance, the new NIL director, and different people like that at the school. So just making sure that everything that we do is comfortable with how they would feel about it. Obviously, it's hard to always know, just because it's so new. But just being able to get clarity from the NCAA or the SEC on certain issues and whatnot, and just, again, maintaining that relationship with those people at Tennessee to make sure that what we're doing is in line with their comfort level on things.
Biggest misnomer fans have out there about NIL. I mean, you've got, I'm sure you've read a bunch of stuff. You've seen everything from Twitter posts to message board posts to talk show calls, all those things. What do you think is the biggest misconception of NIL is for fan bases, not just at Tennessee, but around the country?
I'm sure fans are at some schools. I think Tennessee may be one of them that, hey, we're behind. Um, the school is not doing enough. Probably the biggest misconception is that aside from just a couple schools or a couple states, the institutions cannot be involved whatsoever in facilitating a NIL deal with a player. So a football coach, a basketball coach, whatever, cannot call a donor, cannot call a local business to say, hey, will you do a deal with this player? And so it's really left up to really people like us as marketers, or it's up to businesses that just kind of see, hey, we'd like to work with a player. We think it could be beneficial to our company. Let's figure out how to make that happen. I think that's probably the biggest misconception.
Do you think the NCAA, and you probably can't speak for them if you don't want to answer this, that's fine. I think a lot of people, when it first came out, were like, okay, are there enough businesses out there to have enough athletes to be spokesperson for their business, to have an NIL deal? And I don't know that the donor component of it was talked about a whole lot before July 1 got here. Is that something that you think has been an eye opener for people out there, that there is that component of it besides somebody, quote, being a spokesperson for a business?
It might be. I think especially in the SEC where recruiting is so important, you could always see the path where it's going to be really important to show prospective student athletes that the environment that's being created at the school or in the community, was going to be a place where they felt like they could make some significant money through NIL opportunities. And I mean, you guys have probably seen that or talked to kids, and they're talking about the NIL market in certain schools, and that's now a part of how they view or how they look at, am I going to go to Tennessee versus Georgia?
When I look at a lot of these things, I mean, you're right. The Bryce Youngs and Spencer Rattlers or JT Daniels, the last two of which don't even play, have signed bigger deals. But a lot of these have been more mom and pops, with the local dry cleaners in your hometown, or, Alante's cookie company deal. And now they've got more bang for their buck than probably anybody because of, the flash promotion that he was running. But when you look at, how it all plays out, do you think that the notion that Tennessee's behind is because you're not seeing any big deals here, when in reality, going into the football season, Tennessee really had no kind of, quote, star players? I mean, Cade May's probably Tennessee's biggest name player, but he's an offensive lineman. He's not a quarterback or a running back that has the ball in his hands every play. And do you see that changing now that Hendon Hooker has established himself and potentially could come back for a final year?
Yeah, I think absolutely, Austin. I think if you look at the schools or the players that came out of the gate and probably made significant money, it all was centered around quarterbacks. Who had the best quarterbacks? Obviously, Alabama has a great one. North Carolina had a good one. Georgia had one. Oklahoma, and so those were really where you saw, the biggest splashes. I think Hendon Hooker as a guy potentially coming back for another season. With the season they just had, I think Hendon is poised to really do well in NIL. I think there will be a lot of opportunities. I think just from what we've seen in this community and really the whole state, Tennessee did start the year with not a lot of star power, and they obviously were able to score a lot of points, and offense sells, and it does in marketing as well. So I think guys like Hendon Hooker, Cedric Tillman, potentially a running back, those guys are going to be able to do some deals, and I think you'll see some of that stuff soon.
Do you think that you mentioned earlier that the people you talk to, the donor base, businesses, so on and so forth, they just want Tennessee to win? That's what ultimately they want to see. Do you think that they're okay if if their money goes towards a kid who ends up, getting benched? I mean, you look and you look at JT Daniels. I mean, I can't imagine that those two, those two kids and what they're earning, makes the people that got to deal with them very happy, just because, I mean, they're not out there. they're not visible, whereas, other guys are like Bryce Young.
Yeah. I mean, I see your point. I look at, just in terms of a lot of deals that happen in the NFL happen in the off season. So, major NFL corporate brands might say, "Hey, we're going to go with these players," and somebody may be out for the year with an injury. Somebody may get benched. Somebody may get arrested. Somebody, there are all kinds of things that happen. So I think those are risks that
Sure.
brands take every day. I talked to some people at Zaxby's, about JT Daniels and just the publicity they got from announcing the deal. NIL was so new at the time, so that particular deal got a lot of attention. Not only around the Southeast but nationally. They felt like even though JT Daniels didn't play, they got a lot of bang for their buck just in terms of people that read about the deal or saw the deal somewhere. So there's certainly ways to look at it. I think just knowing, and we want to make sure we're clear with every business or brand that does something with the players that, hey, these are the risks associated with it. Things happen. Players, they're young players. They do get in trouble sometimes. They don't always play like we want them to play. And I think just understanding those risks, on the front end is important.
How are some of these deals being done? I mean, you had the situation at Ohio State where you got the midterm enrollee quarterback who's already in the transfer portal. He's leaving. Spencer Rattler's leaving. I mean, you hear these dollar figures, and I'm assuming some of these are over 3 or 4 years. From a marketing standpoint, how are deals being done so that the business is protected if a kid doesn't stay around, but the kid's also getting the maximized deal that he can get for his college career? How does that kind of structure work?
Yeah, the Ewers deal is one that was a memorabilia kind of autograph deal, so that could certainly follow with him wherever he goes. It wouldn't be specific to Ohio State,
Okay.
but certainly that's a concern. I mean, players are able to get in the transfer portal very easily now. They're able to move around, and so if a Tennessee company does a deal with a Tennessee player and he transfers to Southern Cal or wherever. That's going to do the Tennessee company not going to do that company any good. So, and this is where the state laws get tricky about you can't have a deal that's tied to a specific institution, and so you try to protect the brand as much as you can while also staying inside the parameters of the scope of the laws in that particular state. So I think some of those things are all getting more clarity as we speak, but those are not easy things to kind of work through right now.
We saw BYU make an announcement several months ago that every walk on was going to their school is going to be paid for, and a lot of people wondered how that came about. What do you know any of the backstory there, and do you see that being a common thing to happen to where you see those types of deals where it's not just one individual but it's more broad base for somebody handling whether it's a walk on or whatever the case may be?
So Utah has a really friendly NIL law, which allows the institutions to be involved. So the BYU deal that you're talking about, they announced that inside the team meeting room, I believe.
Right.
So the school was involved with that. They promoted it on social media. A lot of other schools around the country saw that, kind of saw the opportunities there. And I wonder if there's going to be more states, change their laws to allow institutional involvement, in with NIL deals, just because of what you saw in BYU. But no, I think those kind of deals, group deals where you can get multiple players involved at the same time, because certainly locker room dynamics are going to be, part of this as well. So, you want to try to create as many opportunities for as many players as possible, just so it sort of feels like, everybody's involved, everybody's getting to do stuff. So if you have an elite quarterback and he does stuff, with the offensive line as part of some deals he's got. So just different things like that I think you'll see, keep seeing.
Got you. What's next moving forward? And how do you stay to where you don't wake up and your company wake up and feel like, okay, I'm 2 weeks behind because of something new that's come out there? What's next, and how do you stay on top of it?
Yeah. So next is, continuing to raise awareness, continue to talk to people about what we're doing. Continuing to show people ways that they can help, whether it's through their business or whether it's through, them personally. Um, and then creating different types of events that we're going to be doing, all throughout 2022, which allows, student athletes at Tennessee to get back involved in the community, not only in Knoxville, but really statewide. We want to do a lot of things like that. So I think just always be thinking about what's next. New events, new opportunities, different things we can do with players, really creative, and outside the box ideas. Tennessee's a really unique place. It's got an incredible fan base, incredible passion. And, one thing I've thought, is that, NIL has given a chance for these student athletes to go and meet the fans. Whereas, in the past, you never really had a chance to really interact or meet the quarterback of the football team. And so I think there's ways that we can incorporate them into things, not only, in Knoxville, but really around the state as well.
Do you think the event stuff is something that's kind of been untapped? Because again, I think fans say, all right, who's going to represent, wear a T-shirt or be a spokesperson for something? Do you think that event element, meet and greets, and on a bigger scale of those things, do you think that's a wave that's kind of just you guys are just starting to get into, and schools are not schools, but businesses around the country are just starting to look at as maybe a way to really tap into some of this stuff?
Yeah, I think that's the greatest avenue for a company, a brand that wants to work with players, but maybe doesn't want to maybe doesn't want to make the player a brand ambassador for the company. So they take on a lot of risk by doing that. Some things we mentioned, would they get in trouble? Do they not play? But if we do a company wide event, let's say we do a golf tournament and a company hosts that, they bring all their clients there, and we have, 20 student athletes that play with, one player plays with each group, each foursome. That's a way for the brand to get involved, to incorporate the athletes, but don't have the risk of being associated or tied to that athlete for an extended period of time. So we've gotten a lot of interest, had a lot of success with that already this fall, with brands wanting to do events.
Those events, you and I have talked about, before the podcast, would fans get behind the idea of a player-led caravan? Not, the Big Orange Caravan used to be just coaches, but would how the Titans kind of take some players around the state during the off season, like maybe during the month of May when, players are technically allowed to go home. Would that type of event, get off the ground? How do you kind of look at something like that, for potentially fans and players to get out there? And would you compare it to the golf tournament model that you were just talking about?
Yeah, a little bit. We've been able to travel the state quite a bit over the last 6 months, meet a lot of people, really from, Upper East Tennessee all the way to West Tennessee, and the support, the enthusiasm for the Tennessee program is really unmatched. And Tennessee's not even been very successful in football in a long time. Um, I still believe that if you're able to bring, certain student athletes to places that are a long way from Knoxville, maybe, West Tennessee, you bring players to Memphis, or you bring players to the Tri-Cities or Clarksville or wherever, and you do events and you allow those communities, whether it's through a golf tournament, whether it's through a free camp, whether it's through, some type of meet and greets or whatever. But if you allow those athletes the opportunity to come out and those communities meet these people, I think it only helps drive the passion and the fan base just even more. And it allows these people to really interact with a player, that's a current player. Certainly, you've been able to do stuff or see, players that played at Tennessee in the past, but you've never been able to meet, the quarterback, the football team, why he still has eligibility, he's still playing.
James, you mentioned, obviously when people think about donors, they think about big names, they think about people that have lots and lots of money. But you mentioned this a little bit earlier that you think Tennessee has some advantages because there's no competition in state, like, or not as much competition in state. How far down do you think from somebody donating, if you will, or putting money into your company, into the branding part? How far down do you think it goes? How far down realistic is it for just the general fan out there?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it really from the very top all the way to the guy that said, "Hey, here, we want to do $50, $100, or maybe we want to do that a couple times a year or whatnot." So, uh, as we've gone around, we've met people really from all walks of life, all backgrounds. The passion for Tennessee is there, and they want to help. And whether they know a business that might want to help, or they know somebody else that could maybe help financially, it's been really neat to see. And so, I think we're just going to continue to work those relationships and try to expand upon that.
I know you're busy and got a bunch of things to do. I do want to ask this because I hear this and I wonder how you deal with this with players. I see, a player sees player X getting what's listed as, this big of a deal, 6 figures, 7 figures in some cases, whatever. How do you deal with the student athlete in terms of explaining to a 17 to 21-year-old maybe their market value compared to somebody else's market value? And how big of a challenge is that? Because as you mentioned, the locker room dynamic, I'm sure every kid and people around him are saying, "Hey, you're worth this, or this is that, this is that." How do you structure that? How do you handle that with the student athlete?
Yeah, we try to, really tap into our experience, working in professional sports for so long and marketing those guys. And NFL locker rooms are not created equal either. And so you kind of look at, who touches the ball the most, obviously the quarterbacks, the receivers, the running backs, and who chases after the quarterbacks. It's the ends and the linebackers. So those are conversations that we have where we try to educate and we show real facts and real data on what current NFL players are doing. You look at national commercials, in terms of during the NFL season, you'll see very few players aside from quarterbacks that do national commercials. So I think most players are I think most players understand this, especially after you educate them. But I think it's a continuous. We have to be continuously educating them, explaining to them, showing them things, and if they really want to be marketable, kind of showing them ways to do it, whether that's more engagement through social media, uh, you know, maybe it's going out into the community and doing things with charitable organizations. You don't get paid anything for that, but it's hey, it's goodwill, it's branding. You're getting your name out there. Um, so I think that's what we're trying to do.
Well, it is a fascinating, ever-changing landscape. It seems like with lots of questions, lots of things going out there, and I know you guys have been on the front end of this from day one. So, James, we appreciate your time. Thanks for educating the fans. And obviously we'll check in with you at later dates to kind of see whenever there's new things coming about, how that affects things. But the bottom line Tennessee fans should know today is there's opportunities out there for the Tennessee student athletes through you guys. Tennessee's not behind, and this is a frontier that could be very beneficial for student athletes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We think this is a real game changer for Tennessee. For the reasons we mentioned, Knoxville, our state, and really the passionate fan base that we've got. So it's tapping into all those things and really making sure people understand what they can do, how they can do it. That's why we partner with Open Doors, which allows us to run. Not only all the money is through Open Doors, so it's a third party company, but it allows us to have a contract with an athlete, pay the athlete. They have to show proof that they've done the deal, and then Open Doors will pay them. And through Open Doors, they're able to be provided tax forms, as well. So a lot of things like that, that kind of help the athlete, help us, help people who are giving us money feel comfortable about that as well.
James, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, guys.
You've been listening to the VolQuest podcast every week here on VolQuest.